So Daryl Morey is taking over the 76ers. I guess Elton Brand is still going to stay on as the GM, but we assume that the majority of the front office is going to be full of Morey's guys, and I don't think there's been a front office dude ever compared to Morey where his idea of basketball extends to the court so much. I mean, the way that Morey and James Harden basically became conjoined at the hip when it came to thinking about the Rockets' play style, I can't recall another GM who really has been like that. So how is that going to reflect on the 76ers? Well, it gets really interesting to me because it's either will Daryl Morey look at the roster he has with Ben and Joel and look to build around those two while fitting into his ideal style of play, which of course is shots at the basket and three-pointers, or will he try to mold Ben or Joel into something a bit different than they are right now? Or there is the third option, which is one of them gets traded at some point. Now, it should be said again, Daryl Morey is a front office guy. He is not the head coach. Just because James Harden was all in on Morey ball doesn't mean he's going to have the same effectiveness with somebody else if he wants to go that route. Not only that, but Daryl Morey hired the perfect head coach in Mike D'Antoni, who would fit into Morey's ideal style of play. We just saw that Doc Rivers didn't embrace analytics like that. I mean, we saw reports coming out of, obviously there was the Montrez minutes and that, but there was this thing about Steve Ballmer paid a whole bunch of money for an analytics team and the Clippers coaching staff wasn't really listening to them. So is Doc Rivers going to be all about Daryl Morey's input on how the team should play? But again, is it a certainty that Morey extends his basketball beliefs that far out? I mean, for all I know, Morey looks at this roster and he just says, all right, I got to surround Ben and Joel with shooting, and we probably need one more shot creator, so how can I go about doing that? I mean, Daryl Morey has even said that, I believe this is on the Low Post podcast, he said if he had Shaq, then he would post up Shaq every single time. So it'll be interesting. I really don't know what to expect. I mean, I guess the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, where Embiid and Simmons and Doc Rivers update their stuff a little bit for the sake of Morey. But I think it's going to have to be more adjustment on Morey's part, because if he expects to come into Philly and Ben Simmons is shooting a whole bunch of threes, Embiid is shooting a whole bunch of threes, then I don't think this is going to work out very well. But when you look at what the Rockets became by the end, it's like, can I trust Daryl Morey to have a different mindset about it? I don't know. But again, it's like, how do I know he's going to have that much influence over the team's play style like he did in Houston? I mean, it's very rare, like I keep saying, for a team to reflect the general manager that much. So it'll be something. But there is one way in which that all could go, which is the idea of Ben or Joel being traded because they don't fit into the Morey style of basketball. And if that ends up being the case, then that'll be something. As far as when that would happen, you know, even before this, I said we were at minimum 1 season away from Ben or Joel being moved. I honestly think we're closer to 2 or 3 seasons away. I mean, maybe because of Morey, it's different. I feel like he's a GM who has proven to be a little more less patient with moves. I mean, we saw how often he traded picks once he had James Harden and things like that. And of course, the Chris Paul trade, the Westbrook trade. Morey is not concerned with just sitting around year to year and, oh, maybe we'll get better. You know, he wants to not remain stagnant, I guess. I mean, we saw the guy constantly trying to make the team better while a lot of teams were just kind of punting on it because of how good the Warriors were. But anyway, back to the Ben or Joel thing. I mean, you'd think that which guy fits into Morey's ideal thing more, it would be Ben Simmons, of course, just because, you know, you put more shooting out there for him. It's the closest thing you have to what we saw with Harden. Obviously, Ben's not going to have James's shooting, but the lead ball handler, you run everything through him, that sort of thing. Although I do also want to say, is it not weird that the 76ers, in terms of the conversation around them, pivoted so quickly from team with 2 young star players to you might have to trade one of these guys. I mean, I get it. We can talk about the fit and all that stuff, but I mean, let's look at their 3-year resume. Ben Simmons as a rookie gets to round 2 of the playoffs. That's really impressive. Usually rookies do not have that much of a win-now impact. Second season, we know they lose in Game 7 to the Raptors. If that shot by Kawhi doesn't go in, maybe they win the overtime, maybe they beat the Bucks, I don't know. And then this year they get swept by the Celtics. Simmons wasn't playing in that series, all that stuff. It just seems like that's not a lot of things happening for us to be talking about Simmons or Embiid being moved. And for all this talk about how you can't make it work with those two, I mean, you can. We saw it. They almost beat the team that went on to win the finals. I mean, the template is basically one great shooter in Redick, a shot creator in Jimmy, and another guy in Tobias who can do a little bit of everything on offense, even if he's not great at any one thing, I would say. So if I was Daryl Morey, and this is my gut of what he's thinking as well, is how can you replicate that team at this point? I mean, Redick is gone, Jimmy's gone. It's not impossible to find another guy like Redick. It's very difficult to find another guy like Jimmy. But we've seen with Morey, I mean, once he had Harden, he was willing to trade picks a lot. So Philly's got a lot of picks to move. And as far as guys who could be available, I don't know, man. I mean, does this open up the idea of like Victor Oladipo a little bit more for this team? I don't know, because the sense I'm getting is his market is low enough to where the Pacers would think that they should just keep him and see if they can make it work with him. Perhaps Buddy Hield is an option. That's been talked about a bit for this Sixers team. Although I think it's mainly Sixers fans wanting to just rob the Kings. But, you know, it's been out there nonetheless. Could Chris Paul be an option? I don't know, man. His age and health makes it tough. So we'll see what Daryl wants to do in terms of acquiring star players, because you know Daryl likes to do that. And he's got the assets to do it, at least with the picks, and I feel like Daryl wouldn't have as much fear in trading Thibault if he felt it was necessary. I feel like the previous front office would have been a little more skeptical on doing that. Granted, Elton Brand is still here, so yeah. I guess other things to think about with Morey is that he can do some weird stuff with the salary cap, whether it's like giving guys non-guaranteed contracts or sign-in trades or having qualifiers in guys' contracts to where it doesn't hold as much money for their cap situation, but it also makes the player satisfied. Like, Morey has just been really good at making those types of small moves work. I say small, I mean the biggest sign-in trade the guy made was for Chris Paul, but just that type of stuff, you know? So we'll see. It'll be interesting. I do think there's going to be a bit of a culture clash, and we'll see who adjusts to who and all that. The last thing I will say is I feel like there's some people who are writing this off immediately, and some people think that Daryl Morey's not a good GM or something. That is not true. Morey is really good, and it's come out that Tillman Fertitta was the reason why Chris Paul was traded for Westbrook. I just don't think Morey would have wanted to do that move. I think Morey would have looked at that situation and said, all right, we can hopefully make it work with CP and James, and we have more draft picks to make moves. I mean, there was the rumor that he was willing to trade a bunch of picks for Jimmy Butler. Now, I guess it's possible that the CP-Harden relationship couldn't be repaired. And as far as the trading of Capella a little later on, I mean, I don't know, man. Given the situation they were forced in, they had to figure out how to maximize Westbrook, and it worked until Westbrook was hurt. So, was it a bad move? I don't know. It certainly didn't look good against the Lakers, but Westbrook didn't either, so. And as for everything else Morey did with how he built that team up and how he acquired the assets to get Harden and then he traded for him when some teams were like, well, we don't know how good this guy really is. And then the sustained success and the way that the Rockets, at one point during the middle of that run, they looked like they were going to fall off because it was they had Dwight and he left and they won 41 games And then the next season they won 50-something games because he, signed Ryan Anderson, Eric Gordon, and Mike D'Antoni, and Harden became the point guard. Like, that's impressive stuff, and not every team pulls that sort of thing off. I feel like Morey, it became a given that he was good, so we forgot that he was good. But yeah, the guy's a good GM, so, this idea of, he's going to ruin the Sixers, I don't agree. Now, it's not a guarantee they win a title, but I figure I would just do that spiel, because I feel like the thing with Morey is that I feel like there's this perception that he's just like a calculator counting robot who didn't pull off a very impressive run for the Rockets that was like 10 years or whatever it was. I mean, the guy didn't even tank in order to build that team back up, moving on from the Yao and T-Mac days. And now, could you say that he made his teams a little too one-dimensional when it came time to face really good teams in the playoffs? Yes, you could also say that. Although, again, I will say, is it Daryl Morey's fault that James Harden doesn't want to move off the ball? Is it Daryl Morey's fault that Mike D'Antoni doesn't have a little bit more motion in the offense? Like, how far do you want to go with that? Because, again, Daryl Morey, he was never the head coach of the Houston Rockets. So, yeah, we'll see. It'll be something.